Before we go any further, let me ask you something. Not something you answer out loud, but something you answer honestly in your heart. Have you ever loved God deeply, trusted Him sincerely, prayed faithfully, and still felt tired? Not tired of believing, not tired of serving, but tired of waiting. Tired of waking up with hope and going to bed with questions. Tired of hearing "be patient" when your heart is already stretched thin. Tired of carrying promises that feel heavier with time instead of lighter. If that's you, you are not weak, you are human. And tonight, you are seen. There is a quiet ache that only those who walk by faith understand. The ache of knowing God is able, yet not knowing when. The ache of holding on to a word from heaven while living in circumstances that contradict it every day. You smile in public, worship in church, encourage others, and then go home and whisper, "Lord, how much longer?" That whisper is not rebellion. It is the language of someone who still believes. This message is for the ones who didn't walk away, the ones who stayed when it would have been easier to quit, the ones who kept praying even when prayer felt like work, the ones who love God but are wrestling with silence. If you are tired of waiting on God, this is not a rebuke, it is an embrace, because sometimes the most anointed people are not shouting in victory, they are quietly enduring in faith. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is sit in the presence of God and say, "I don't understand this, but I'm still here." So take a breath. Let your guard down. You don't have to pretend anymore. This is not a message about rushing God or shaming your struggle. This is a message about understanding the purpose of the wait, the heart of God in the delay, and the strength being formed in you even when you feel worn. If you're tired of waiting on God, hear this. Because what God builds through waiting is not seasonal, it is eternal in impact. And eternal things are never rushed. Heaven does not operate under pressure, panic, or comparison. Heaven operates under purpose, and purpose has its own pace. You've been measuring your life against clocks God never consulted. You've been comparing your progress to people God never assigned you to follow. And every time you do that, you drain your joy and weaken your trust, because comparison is a thief. It steals peace, it steals gratitude, and it steals confidence in God's process. But hear this clearly, God does not manage destinies with templates. What He is doing with you is custom made. That's why your journey looks different. That's why your progress feels slower. That's why your prayers seem unanswered longer. Because God is not copying someone else's story onto your life. He is authoring something original. And originals take time. Some of you are tired not because you're weak, but because you've been carrying expectations God never gave you. Expectations from family, expectations from culture, expectations from church, expectations from social media. You feel like you're behind because you don't look like what success is supposed to look like by now. But success in heaven is obedience, not speed. Success is faithfulness, not visibility. God is far more interested in who you're becoming than what you're achieving. Because achievements fade, but character remains. Platforms shift, but identity stands. Applause dies down, but integrity speaks forever. And let me say this gently. Sometimes God slows you down because if He lets you move faster, you outrun your own healing. You'd arrive wounded. You'd arrive bitter. You'd arrive broken on the inside while everything looks fine on the outside. And God loves you too much to let you succeed prematurely and collapse privately. So He waits. He waits for your heart to forgive fully. He waits for your pride to soften. He waits for your dependency on validation to die. He waits for your prayer life to deepen beyond requests into relationship. Because what God wants most is not your performance, it's your presence. There are prayers God delays because the answer would distract you from Him. And there are seasons God withholds because He's drawing you closer. Not every no is rejection. Not every not yet is punishment. Sometimes delay is divine intimacy. Think about it. Some of the deepest conversations you've had with God happened in seasons where you had nothing else to lean on, when friends didn't understand, when doors stayed closed, when plans failed, when tears became your language. Age. That's when God became real to you. Not just powerful, but personal. Waiting strips you of illusions. It removes false confidence. It dismantles self-reliance. And that's painful because we like feeling in control. We like knowing the next step. We like certainty. But faith thrives where control dies. And that's why waiting feels like surrender, because it is. Surrender is not giving up, it's giving over, giving God the right to decide when, how, and through whom. Giving God permission to disappoint your expectations in order to fulfill His promise. And that's hard, because sometimes God's promise looks nothing like what you imagined. You thought it would happen quickly. God said it would happen correctly. You thought it would be easy. God said it would be worth it. You thought it would feel triumphant from the start. God said it would begin in humility. And humility hurts when your gift is big, when your vision is clear, when your calling burns inside you. Because you know, here's more, yet you're living with less. You know there's purpose, yet you're stuck in process. And process is slow, repetitive, and often unglamorous. But process protects you. Process teaches you patience when power arrives. Process teaches you compassion when authority comes. Process teaches you wisdom when influence increases. Without process, promotion would destroy you. Some of you are in a season where God is teaching you how to wait without quitting, how to worship without reward, how to obey without explanation. And those lessons don't feel spiritual. They feel heavy. They feel lonely. They feel unfair. But they are shaping you into someone who can carry weight without breaking, because what's coming will require emotional maturity, spiritual depth, mental resilience. And if God gave it to you now, it would crush you instead of bless you. That's why the weight has been stretching your faith. That's why the silence has been testing your trust. That's why the delay has been exposing areas of your heart you didn't know needed healing. God is not wasting this season. Every tear is counted. Every prayer is recorded. Every moment of obedience is remembered. And even when you feel like heaven is quiet, God is still speaking, just not always in the way you expect. Sometimes He speaks through resistance, sometimes through closed doors, sometimes through discomfort, because comfort rarely produces transformation. Let me speak to the one who feels overlooked, the one who serves faithfully but remains unseen, the one who gives generously but receives little recognition, the one who shows up, prays, believes, and still feels invisible. God sees you, heaven sees you, and more importantly, God trusts you. Visibility is not favor. Hiddenness is not rejection. Many of God's most powerful works are done in private long before they appear in public. You don't rush a foundation. You don't speed up roots. You don't microwave maturity. And if God has you hidden, it's because exposure too early would harm you. There are things God wants to do in you before He does things through you. Because when people see the gift before the character is ready, they applaud the wrong thing, and applause at the wrong time can derail destiny. So God waits. He waits until your identity is anchored in Him, not in outcomes. He waits until your joy is not dependent on applause. He waits until your peace is not shaken by delays. Because when you finally step into what He promised, He wants you stable, grounded, and secure. You are not being delayed, you're being fortified. And I know your heart has whispered, Lord, how long? That's a holy question. The Bible is full of people who asked it. You're not faithless for asking. Sometimes God answers how long with stay faithful. Not because He's avoiding the question, but because the answer is tied to who you become while you wait. There are levels of blessing that only open to those who didn't quit when it hurt. There are doors reserved for people who stayed obedient even when discouraged. There is authority that only comes from endurance, because endurance produces wisdom. Wisdom produces discernment. Discernment produces restraint. And restraint is what keeps success from destroying you. Some of you are tired because you've been trying to carry tomorrow's weight with today's strength. God never asked you to do that. He only gives grace for today. Tomorrow has its own supply. That's why worrying about timing exhausts you. It pulls from grace you were never meant to access yet. Stay present, stay obedient today. Stay faithful now. That's where grace flows. And listen, God is not ignoring your prayers. He is answering them in layers. Some prayers are answered immediately. Some are answered gradually. And some are answered by God changing you first. Because sometimes the miracle is not the situation changing. It's you gaining the strength to walk through it without losing your faith. You didn't come this far to give up now. You didn't survive everything behind you to quit in the middle. You didn't endure all that pain, all that confusion, all that silence just to walk away right before alignment happens. Because alignment does happen. Suddenly happens. Doors open. Hearts change. Opportunities appear. And when it does, you realize the waiting wasn't empty. It was full of lessons, full of preparation, full of encounters with God you never would have had otherwise. One day the wait will make sense. Not while you're in it, but after. And when that day comes, you won't regret the waiting. You'll be grateful for it. Because you'll realize God wasn't withholding, He was protecting. He wasn't delaying, He was preparing. He wasn't silent. He was shaping you into someone who could walk in purpose without losing humility. And right now, even if your hands feel empty, your spirit is being filled. Even if your prayers feel unanswered, your faith is being strengthened. Even if your progress feels invisible, heaven is taking notes. So don't measure this season by what you don't have. Measure it by what you're becoming. Don't judge God by the calendar. Trust Him by His character. Because the same God who called you is faithful to complete the work He started. He doesn't abandon projects halfway. He doesn't forget promises He spoke. He doesn't lose track of chosen ones in the waiting. And you are chosen. Not because you're perfect. Not because you're special by human standards. But because God decided to place purpose on your life. And when God chooses someone, He commits to the process, even when it's slow. So if you're tired of waiting, don't quit. Rest. Breathe. Be honest with God, but stay. Because what's ahead of you requires the strength that is being formed in you now. And the delay you're frustrated with today is the very thing that will make sense when you step into what God has prepared. And even now, as you sit in this tension between promise and fulfillment, heaven is not distant. God is not absent. He is closer than you think, working in ways you cannot see, aligning things you cannot control, preparing moments you cannot rush. And there will come a time, at the appointed time, when what you've been waiting for will no longer be something you pray about, but something you steward carefully, humbly, gratefully. Until then, stay faithful in the waiting. Stay soft in the silence. Stay obedient in the uncertainty. Because the same God who taught you how to wait is the God who will teach you how to walk into what He promised without losing yourself in the process. And as long as there is breath in your body, God is not done. As long as there is faith in your heart, heaven is still working. As long as you are still standing, still believing, still hoping, this story is not over. And what you're becoming in this season is far more important than what you're asking for. And that is why the wait continues. Because becoming is the real miracle God is after. You asked for a change in circumstance, but God answered with a change in capacity. You asked for relief, but God gave you resilience. You asked for an open door, but God gave you endurance to stand in front of closed ones without losing your faith. And that doesn't feel like love when you're tired. It feels like delay. It feels like resistance. It feels like God is asking too much. But He's not asking too much. He's revealing how much is already inside you. There is a strength being formed in you that could not be formed any other way. Strength that does not come from motivation, but from survival. Strength that does not come from applause, but from obedience. Strength that does not come from understanding, but from trust. And that kind of strength cannot be rushed. Some of you have been praying for clarity, but God has been training you for courage. Because clarity won't always be available in the future you're stepping into. There will be moments where you won. To have time to analyze, explain, or ask for confirmation, you'll have to move by faith, not by feeling. And this waiting season is teaching you how to stand firm, even when nothing makes sense. Waiting teaches you how to hear God without noise. When everything is quiet, you learn to discern His voice without distractions. When there is no crowd cheering you on, You learn whether you truly believe what God said or if you were only fueled by affirmation. And that's a hard truth to face, because some people love the promise more than the promiser. They love what God can give more than who God is. And waiting exposes that. Waiting reveals whether your faith is transactional or relational, whether you follow God for blessings or because He is God. And if you're still here, still praying, still trusting, still showing up, even while tired, even while discouraged, even while confused, it means your faith is real, not perfect, but real. God is not intimidated by your questions. He is not threatened by your tears. He is not offended by your exhaustion. What He responds to is surrender. Not dramatic surrender, quiet surrender. The kind that says, Lord, I don't understand this, but I still choose you. That choice matters more than you know. There are moments when obedience feels invisible, when you do the right thing and nothing changes, when you resist temptation and still struggle, when you stay faithful and still feel lonely. But heaven records those moments differently than earth does. Earth celebrates outcomes. Heaven honors obedience. And one day you will realize that the season you thought was empty was actually full of unseen victories. Victories over bitterness, victories over resentment, victories over impatience, victories over the urge to walk away. Because quitting would have been easier, giving up would have been simpler, settling would have been faster. But you stayed, and staying is sacred. Some of you are tired because you've been carrying faith alone. You feel like no one really understands what you're believing God for. You don't talk about it much anymore because people either doubt it or try to rush it. So you keep it between you and God, and that loneliness weighs on you. But hear this, you are not alone in the waiting. God is with you in the quiet moments, in the unanswered prayers, in the long nights, in the tears you wipe away before anyone sees them. He is present in ways you may not feel, but that does not make Him absent. Faith is not about feeling God. It's about trusting His presence even when feelings fail. There are things God is doing behind the scenes that you cannot see yet. Conversations you're not in, decisions being made, hearts being softened, doors being prepared. And if you saw it all now, you'd rush the process. So God shields you from the full picture to protect the timing. Because timing is everything. A blessing at the wrong time becomes a burden. A relationship at the wrong time becomes a distraction. Influence at the wrong time becomes corruption. God is not just concerned with giving you what you ask for. He is concerned with how it will affect you once you have it. That's why the wait feels personal, because it is. God is working with you, not just around you. Some of you are learning how to trust God without backup plans. You used to say, if this doesn't work, I'll do that. But now God has removed the alternatives. Not to trap you, but to teach you dependence. Because when God is your only option, He becomes your greatest revelation. And that's uncomfortable, because we like options. We like control. We like escape routes. But God is building faith that doesn't flinch when the only path forward is obedience. You're learning how to walk without guarantees, how to hope without timelines, how to believe without evidence. And that kind of faith changes you forever. This season is not about speed, it's about depth. Depth in prayer, depth in character, depth in humility, PTH in discernment, because shallow faith cannot sustain deep purpose. Some of you are being prepared for influence you don't see yet, people you will lead, lives you will impact, words you will speak that will shape others' faith. And if God rushed you into that assignment before you were ready, you would carry influence without wisdom, authority without compassion, vision without patience. So He waits. He waits until you learn how to listen, until you learn how to pause, until you learn how to respond instead of react. Because leadership in the kingdom is not about power, it's about responsibility. And responsibility requires maturity. I know it's hard to hear that the waiting has meaning when your heart is tired, when your prayers feel repetitive, when your faith feels stretched thin. But the waiting is not empty, it is intentional. You are being shaped into someone who can walk in blessing without losing gratitude. someone who can walk in success without losing prayer, someone who can walk in recognition without losing humility. Because God has seen what unprepared blessings do to people. He has seen how success without character destroys lives. And He loves you too much to let that be your story. So if He's holding you back, it's not because He doesn't trust you. It's because He does. Some of you are learning patience, not because you want to, but because you must. Because where God is taking you will require long obedience, long vision, long faithfulness. And impatience would sabotage what endurance will secure. And even now, while you're waiting, God is still using you, still teaching through you, still shaping others through your obedience. You don't need a platform to have purpose. You don't need visibility to have impact. You don't need recognition to matter. Your faithfulness in hidden places is doing more than you realize. One day, you will look back at this season and realize it taught you how to pray when you had no answers, how to worship when you had no breakthroughs, how to trust when you had no control. And those lessons will stay with you longer than the blessing itself, because blessings come and go. Seasons change, but who you become lasts. And right now, God is building something in you that cannot be taken away by disappointment, delay, or doubt. He is anchoring your faith deeper than outcomes, teaching you to trust His heart. Even when you don't understand His hand, that kind of faith cannot be shaken. So don't despise this season. Don't rush through it. Don't numb yourself to get past it. Let it do its work. Let it shape you. Let it strengthen you. Cry if you need to. Rest if you must. Be honest with God. But do not walk away, because walking away would cost you everything the waiting is preparing you for. The story is still unfolding. The promise is still alive. The calling is still valid. And heaven is still moving, even if earth feels still. And somewhere in the unseen, alignment is happening. Pieces are oming together. Timing is being perfected. And when it happens, it won't just change your circumstances. It will confirm everything God has been forming inside you all along. And until that moment arrives, this waiting season will continue to stretch you, shape you, and teach you how to trust God, not just for what He does, but for who He is. And that trust is still being built, because trust that is still being built has not yet reached its full weight-bearing strength. And God knows exactly how much pressure to apply without breaking you. He knows when to stretch and when to let you breathe. Even when it feels relentless, even when you wonder how much longer you can hold on, heaven is not guessing. Heaven is precise. You are learning something sacred right now. The ability to wait without becoming bitter. That is not a small thing. Many people wait, but they wait angry. They wait resentful. They wait suspicious of God. But God is shaping you to wait with hope still alive, even when it flickers. And that kind of waiting separates those who are merely religious from those who are truly surrendered. Because surrendered faith does not say, I trust you if you do it my way. It says, I trust you even when you don't explain yourself. And that level of trust changes the way you see God forever. You stop seeing Him as a vending machine and start seeing Him as a father. A father who knows what you want, yes, but more importantly, a father who knows what you need. Some of the things you've been asking for would have answered your prayers but damaged your future. And God is more committed to your future than to your frustration in the present. So He says no sometimes. He says wait often. And He says trust always. And I know trust feels expensive right now. It feels like it costs you sleep. It costs you certainty. It costs you emotional energy. But what trust gives you in return is unshakable peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from everything going right, but the key ND that stays even when nothing is resolved. That peace doesn't come quickly. It's learned. It's earned through nights when you choose prayer over panic, through days when you choose obedience over impulse, through moments when you choose faith over fear, even though fear feels louder. Fear always feels louder in the waiting, because fear feeds on uncertainty. It whispers, what if nothing changes? What if you're wrong? What if this is all there is? But fear has never been a prophet. Fear has never predicted destiny accurately. Fear only reacts to the present. God speaks from the future, and God's view is higher than yours. You see delay. God sees development. You see closed doors. God sees protection. You see lost time. God sees invested time, time spent learning, healing, growing, maturing, time that will pay dividends later when pressure increases and responsibility expands. Some of you are being prepared for seasons where many will lean on you, where your strength will support others, where your wisdom will guide decisions that affect more than just you. And if God does not build that strength now, you would collapse later under the weight of expectation. So He trains you quietly, patiently, sometimes painfully, but always purposefully. And here's something you need to hear clearly. Your waiting is not delaying God's plan. God factored this season in before you were born. He knew how long it would take. He knew how many times you would question. He knew how tired you would feel, and He still chose you. He chose you knowing you would struggle, knowing you would doubt, knowing you would ask, why me? And still He chose you. That means your weakness does not disqualify you. Your exhaustion does not surprise Him. Your questions do not threaten Him. They simply reveal that you are human, and God does not revoke calling because of humanity. He works through it. There are moments when you feel like you're falling behind, but spiritually you are moving ahead. You are learning discernment. You are learning restraint. You are learning how to wait on God instead of running ahead of Him. And that lesson alone will save you from countless mistakes in the future. Because running ahead of God feels productive, but it produces regret. Waiting on God feels slow, but it produces peace. And peace is priceless. Some of you are being taught how to say no to things that look good but aren't God. How to resist or port. Unities that would distract you from purpose. How to stay aligned even when alternatives seem easier. And that discipline will matter later when choices are bigger and consequences are heavier. This season is training your discernment, training your patience, training your spiritual hearing, because where God is taking you will require wisdom more than enthusiasm. Enthusiasm fades, wisdom remains. And while you're waiting, God is also emptying you of things that cannot go with you. Old mindsets, old insecurities, old dependencies, old fears, old definitions of success, because you cannot carry yesterday's thinking into tomorrow's assignment. So sometimes waiting feels like loss, like things are being stripped away, like you're letting go of versions of yourself you once relied on. And that's painful, because identity shifts are always uncomfortable. But God is not removing things to leave you empty. He is making room for clarity, room for confidence rooted in Him, room for peace, a pose unpolluted by pride or fear. And even though it feels like you're standing still, you are actually in motion internally. Your faith is expanding. Your capacity is increasing. Your vision is being refined. And one day, you'll realize that when movement finally happens externally, you'll be ready internally. That's when you'll understand why the wait was necessary. Right now, God is teaching you how to endure without applause, how to obey without feedback, how to believe without reassurance. And that faith is rare. That faith is powerful. That faith moves heaven, because heaven responds to faith that is not dependent on results. And let me tell you something that may surprise. God is not in a hurry to end this season because of how much it is doing for you. Not to punish you, not to frustrate you, but to solidify you. Temporary blessings come quickly. Lasting ones take time, and God intends what He does in your life to last. So if you feel stretched, that's growth. If you feel uncomfortable, that's transformation. If you feel tired, that's because something new is forming that requires strength you didn't need before. Rest when you need to. Pause when you must. But don't misinterpret fatigue as failure. Even Jesus rested. Even Jesus withdrew. Rest is not quitting, it's refueling. And God is gentle with you even when the process feels hard. He knows your limits. He knows your frame. He knows when to whisper encouragement and when to let silence build trust. Silence is not absence. Silence is often instruction without words. In silence, you learn to listen. In silence, you learn to trust. In silence, you learn to stay. And staying is everything, because the temptation to walk away will come. The urge to settle will whisper. the desire to choose something easier will present itself. But those moments are crossroads. And every time you choose faith over fear, alignment over impulse, obedience over convenience, you strengthen the foundation of your future. Foundations are not glamorous. They're hidden. They're messy. They take time. But when storms come, and they will, you'll be grateful for the depth God built when no one was watching. Some of you are being prepared for storms that will not destroy you, but refine you. Storms that will test your faith, not to break it, but to prove it. And if God does not anchor you now, those storms would shake you later. So He anchors you in waiting. And I know it's not what you asked for. You asked for movement. You asked for answers. You asked for clarity. But God answered with preparation, because preparation is mercy. Mercy that keeps you from regret. Mercy that saves you from shortcuts. Mercy that protects you from yourself. And even now, while you're still waiting, your story is unfolding. Your faith is being noticed in heaven. Your obedience is being honored. Your tears are not wasted. Your prayers are not falling to the ground unheard. There is a divine record being kept. A record of endurance, a record of faithfulness, a record of trust under pressure, and that record will matter when doors open that only character can walk through. So don't rush what God is carefully crafting. Don't despise the slow work of grace. Don't underestimate the power of staying when it would be easier to leave. Because one day, when the wait is over and the promise begins to unfold, you will realize that this season did not weaken you. It fortified you. And the person who steps into that future will not be the same person who first began waiting. They will be stronger, wiser, more humble, more grounded, more secure in God. And until that day arrives, the waiting continues to teach, to shape, to prepare, quietly, deeply, faithfully, because faith that has not been tested has not yet been trusted with weight. And God is not careless with weight. He does not place heavy responsibility on shallow roots. He does not pour deep influence into fragile identity. He does not release lasting purpose into hearts that still need constant reassurance. So He waits. And while He waits, He builds. You are being built from the inside out. That's why this season feels so internal, so emotional, so reflective. You're not just waiting for things to happen around you. You're being confronted with things within you. Old fears you thought were gone. Old doubts you assumed were settled. Old wounds you believed had healed. They surface now not to shame you, but to free you. Because God will not take you into the future carrying unresolved pain from the past. Some of you are learning how to forgive people who will never apologize. How to release resentment without closure. How to move forward without explanation. And that work is exhausting, but it is holy work. Because bitterness blocks blessing and unforgiveness poisons progress. God is teaching you how to let go. Not because they deserve it, but because you do. Waiting exposes what pressure hides. It reveals where your trust truly lies, whether it's in God's promises or in predictable outcomes, whether it's in His character or in your comfort. And when those things are shaken, you begin to see what your faith is really built on. That discovery can be painful, because sometimes we realize we trusted God as long as things were moving, as long as doors were opening, as long as prayers were being answered quickly. But when movement stops, faith is tested. And testing is not punishment, it's proof. Proof that your faith can survive without immediate reward. Proof that your obedience is not conditional. Proof that your relationship with God is not transactional. That kind of faith moves heaven, and heaven is paying attention. You may feel like nothing is happening, but decisions are being made. Alignments are shifting. Opportunities are being prepared. Hearts are being positioned. And God is orchestrating things in ways you could never manage on your own. Because destiny involves more than just you. It involves timing, people, circumstances, systems, and moments that must converge at the right time. And if even one piece is out of place, the outcome would be compromise. So God waits until everything aligns. And that alignment often takes longer than we want, but never longer than necessary. Some of you are being taught patience, not as a concept, but as a lifestyle. Learning how to trust God daily, not just for big breakthroughs, but for small mercies. Learning how to thank Him for provision, even when the promise feels distant. Learning how to worship in the middle, not just at the finish line. And that middle place, the in-between, is where many people give up. Not because they don't believe God can do it, but because they're tired of believing without seeing. But seeing is not the foundation of faith. Trust is. Faith that needs constant evidence is fragile. Faith that rests on God's nature is unshakable. And God is shifting you from fragile faith to firm faith. That shift doesn't feel exciting. It feels stretching. It feels uncomfortable. It feels lonely at times. Because fewer people can walk with you in seasons where nothing makes sense. But God walks with you there, closely, intentionally, personally. He listens to prayers you don't even know how to articulate. He understands sighs that come from deep exhaustion. He sees the moments when you almost quit but chose to stay. And those moments matter more than you know. Because staying when it's hard develops spiritual authority. Authority not given by position, but earned through endurance. Authority that comes from knowing God personally, not just knowing about Him. And that authority will matter when you step into future seasons where others look to you for strength, guidance, and wisdom. They won't need someone who has all the answers. They'll need someone who knows how to trust God when answers are absent. That's who you're becoming. You are learning how to walk by faith without emotional highs, how to obey without excitement, how to remain consistent without external validation. And that consistency will carry you farther than motivation ever could. Motivation fades. Discipline remains. Faith that is rooted in discipline, not emotion, survives droughts, and droughts come. Seasons where prayers feel dry, where worship feels heavy, where scripture feels familiar but distant. And those seasons are not signs of spiritual failure, they are signs of maturation. Children need constant affirmation. Adults learn to trust without it. God is treating you like someone He trusts, and that trust is expensive. It costs comfort, it costs clarity, it costs control. But it gives you something far greater in return, depth of character, depth of faith, depth of discernment, depth of relationship with God that cannot be shaken by circumstances. Some of you are realizing that what you thought was delay was actually protection from misalignment. There were things you wanted that would have taken you off course. People you prayed for who would have drained you. Opportunities you desired that would have distracted you. And God, in His mercy, said no. At the time, it felt like rejection. Now, slowly, it's starting to feel like rescue. Because God does not just answer prayers. He guards destinies. And guarding a destiny sometimes means frustrating your impatience. You are not being punished by waiting. You are being preserved. Preserved from pride. Preserved from burnout. Preserved from compromise. Preserved from becoming something impressive but empty. God is far more concerned with who you are when no one is watching than who you appear to be when everyone is watching. And this season is forming integrity. Integrity that doesn't bend under pressure. Integrity that doesn't chase shortcuts. Integrity that doesn't need applause to stay faithful. That integrity will matter when decisions get harder and stakes get higher. Some of you will one day stand at crossroads where compromise will look profitable, where cutting corners will look tempting, where choosing God will cost you something visible. And in those moments, the strength to choose rightly will come from this waiting season. Because waiting trains you to trust God when obedience costs you comfort. And that is not a lesson learned quickly. Right now, you are being taught how to sit with unresolved questions without letting them harden your heart. How to live with uncertainty without losing hope. How to wait without becoming cynical. Cynicism is easy. Hope is costly. And you are choosing hope, even when it feels heavy. That choice matters. Every time you choose to pray instead of complain. Every time you choose to trust instead of panic. Every time you choose obedience instead of control. You are building something eternal. Eternal things do not come quickly. They come correctly. And God is not late. He is intentional. There will come a moment at the right time when things begin to move quickly, when doors open faster than you expected, when clarity comes suddenly, when prayers are answered in ways that leave you breathless. And when that moment arrives, you will realize that God was never inactive. He was preparing you to handle the acceleration without losing balance, preparing you to steward the blessing without losing humility, preparing you to walk in purpose without losing dependence on Him. Acceleration without preparation destroys people. God refuses to destroy you, so He waits. And while He waits, He teaches you how to trust Him, not just for outcomes, but for timing, not just for provision, but for process, not just for miracles, but for maturity. Maturity that says, even if it takes longer, I will still follow. Maturity that says, even if I don't understand, I will still obey. Maturity that says, even if it hurts, I will still trust. That is not weak faith. That is strong faith. Strong faith is forged in waiting. So if you are tired, rest, but do not retreat. If you are discouraged, be honest, but do not disconnect. If you are confused, ask, but do not abandon your faith. Because the God who called you into this season is the same God who will lead you out of it. And until that moment arrives, this waiting will continue to deepen you, refine you, and shape you into someone who can carry what is coming without losing your soul. And what is coming will require everything this season is building in you. Chosen one, let me leave you with this truth anchored deep in your spirit. The waiting did not break you. It built you. Every tear you cried became a prayer. Every silent night became an altar. Every moment you wanted to quit but chose to trust became a testimony written in heaven. You are not emerging from this season empty-handed. You are emerging equipped, grounded, and prepared for what only God could entrust to you. The delay did not mean God was distant. It meant He was deliberate. And now, even if you still don't see the full picture, you can rest knowing this. The same God who sustained you in the waiting will establish you in the fulfillment. So walk forward without fear, without bitterness, without regret. Trust His timing, trust His heart, trust His promise. Because what God has spoken over your life has not expired. And when it unfolds, you will realize the wait was not wasted. It was holy.